There we go. And I am going to share this screen and we'll start the chat and the participants.
Let me
And we're
get
going to
them
start
in.
letting them in. All right. John, you okay with letting them in?
I'm great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Here they come.
All right. Good evening, folks. It is nice to see you all here on our AP Lang, at our AP Lang session for today. As you come in, I am going to ask that, as always, you put a little shout out in your chat. Tell us where you're coming from. I happen to know that there's at least one person in this room today that is coming to us from Spain. And you will all be hearing from him in just a few moments for that. But hello. Oh, look, there's someone from Paris, but it's Paris, Texas. But hello to everyone. Hello to Mary Ellen from Worcester, by the way. That's right up the street from me. I am Tim Freitas. I will be the one who is the presider for today. So if you all don't get your PD certificates, you're going to want to make sure that you email me and bombard me with all those emails tomorrow. I will probably send those out in the morning as opposed to tonight. But welcome, and hello to you all. This is the third week of Mosaic, I think. I think we're at week 3. So we appreciate your support as we have been putting this on for you all. And so that John can have the most time to cover what he's going to cover for tonight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go through and discuss just our slides, which you get every night anyway. But please note that the Mosaic Conference is brought to you by a bunch of volunteer individuals. But this year it is sponsored by Perfection in terms of our Zoom account. They are the ones that are paying for our Zoom account so that we can actually have a larger capacity than 100. And we apologize for what happened last night, but luckily the recording is indeed out there. On top of that, please note that Marco Learning is indeed one of our sponsors for this year. We are grateful to have I guess the CEO, for the lack of a better term, is CEO, John. We have the CEO of Marco Learning presenting tonight. So he could talk a little bit about that. The Garden of English is a sponsor here. I am the owner of the Garden of English. And so you can check us out at thegardenofenglish.com. Susan Barber, who created this whole thing for you all, is in charge of aplithelp.com. And you can actually access all of the recordings for this and the transcripts and the chat transcripts at aplithelp.com. Please note, though, that if you send a private chat message, that does get recorded in the chat transcript. So just tossing that out there. We have Jackie Stallworth, who's on our committee, and she is the owner of Stallworth Educational Consulting. She is a diversity company there. And then we have Bloom by Magnolia, which is owned by Christy Seidel, who runs the AP Lang Facebook page, or the larger of the two groups. And she actually is the one that has the t-shirt for this year's Mosaic. Okay. We do have some coming up for the keynote. We have Dr. David Kirkland. Actually, next week it's going to be Brandon Abden, by the way. We'll show that slide at the end. And then we do have a grand finale. Okay. And so we want to make sure that we look at this Teach Living Poets here. This was just brought in and we're super excited about that. And Perfection is fully sponsoring that as well, as we welcome Elizabeth. Please note that Perfection does indeed have some AP Lang and some AP Lit textbooks, and you can actually access them by this QR code here. And this is a QR code for the Garden of English. We are running some summer workshops. If you're interested in the AP Lang summer workshop, please note that starts next week. We have evening and daytime options. We've got 1 more slot for evening and then 5 more slots for the daytime. If you're interested in that, you can go to thegardenofenglish.com. We also have AP Lit options as well. And there are evening and daytime slots open for that. So thegardenofenglish.com, or just check out this QR code here. We also have our Mosaic shirt for the year. If you're interested in that, you're going to want to check out this QR code, take a picture of that, and you can access that and get a pre-order for your shirt for this year's Mosaic conference. And this is our crew. And the reason why we go through all of these kind of sponsorship elements is because we do this for free. And if you're looking to help support in any way, by all means, we check out the opportunities that have indeed been presented to you before. But now that I've gone through all of that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I am going to introduce John Moscatiello here. If I said that correctly, please forgive me if I didn't, John, you can clarify. But John is indeed the owner of Marco Learning. He started that company. And I am thankful to say that John's a friend of mine. And I really appreciate all the support that he has given Mosaic and the Garden of English. And we welcome him here to have his, or should I say, give his presentation on how art and AP Lang can meet. So John, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to give it over to you. I'll monitor the chat and we'll go from there.
Great. Thank you so much, Tim, Carlos, everyone on the Mosaic team. I'm such a huge fan of high quality free PD for teachers. It's great to see so many wonderful, shiny faces all around America and the Dominican Republic and other places. I am coming to you live from Madrid, Spain. By accident, I kind of ended up here and it's 1 a.m. So here's what I want to do, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. These are slides that I'll share with you all. My topic, and let me know if you can all see this. I'm going to pull up my chat as well, get myself all configured here in Zoom. The title of my speech is Art and an Aesthetic Experience in the AP English Classroom. And actually, this was a talk I was scheduled to give at the AP Annual Conference in 2020. And then something happened and that conference didn't happen. And then this one didn't happen. So I've been desperate for a conference to present this at because I love teaching art. And I hope that I can share some of that enthusiasm with you all with some specific resources as well. So here's my agenda. I'm going to do a quick introduction of myself, and then I'm going to start with an interactive lesson that you can use because PD isn't worth anything unless you walk away with something that you can use. Then I'm going to give you something even better, which is a terrible lesson that you cannot use and should never use. And bad teaching as an art form is a really great way to learn how to be a great teacher. I'm going to give you my 5 tips for teaching art. We're going to talk a little bit about why art does belong in the AP English classroom. This isn't art history, I get it, but I think there's a really good case for visual sources in art. And I'm going to I'm going to close with a little sermon about how I think art can open doors for you and your students for all sorts of new perspectives and diverse voices. So, who I am, I teach high school, middle school, lower school, and I work in the college admissions office at my school, the Wilberforce School in Central New Jersey, Princeton, New Jersey, where I live. I've been there for the last 5 years. I've been a teacher for the last 19. A lot of my career was cultivated at the Princeton Review, McGraw-Hill, in the world of publishing, in the world of test prep, which is a weird and kind of great place actually to learn how to teach. So this was who I was this year, a year I want to flush down the memory hole forever. I taught in a mask. These are my 9th graders, my classical roots of the English language course. I was teaching Latin and Greek and how it formed our language. I love teaching language and culture. I'm the founder of Marco Learning. It's a very, very busy operation of what we do. Basically, we support students with lots of free and low cost resources. Hold on, let me just adjust this real quick. And as some of you may have seen our YouTube channel before, some of the study guide packs and resources we've got. We also run professional development and lesson plans for teachers. This year, it's really exciting. We work with more than 100,000 students through school-based support that basically, it's kind of one of our superpowers. AP English and other teachers upload their essay, student work from Google Classroom to our graders who we train, and we do all the grading and the feedback. And this is buying teachers who have 180 hours of 180 students that time back on their calendar. So that's what I do. Now let's cut the nonsense and get into a lesson you can use. So here's what I need from you all. I need you to open a Word doc or Google Doc or Notes or something you can type in. And I need you to get that all situated. And then we're going to write with a prompt. My prompt for all of you has 3 words. I'm also going to provide a link, and I'll do this to everyone here for you to access this work of art that we're going to talk about. So 3-word prompt, and get your docs ready. We're going to actually do this together. So here's what I need you to do. And I'm going to real quick, I'm just going to grab this link. So I've got it into the chat. Click on this link. It's going to take you to Google Arts and Culture, which is a superpower of Google that's going to let you see that image on the right in ultra high resolution. When I do this with my students, we do it for about 8 to 10 minutes. Nobody wants to do that. 5 minutes is a lot here, okay? But I need you all to write. I need you to write as much as you possibly can. Your prompt is highlighted. Your prompt is to describe this painting. Set timer for 5 minutes. Clock's on, people. Write a description for me. Don't type anything in the chat box. Don't press enter until I tell you can. Write. And again, please click on the link to access this image and be able to really see the work of art. Let me know in the chat if there's any problems with that. And what I'll do for anyone who can't access the link, I'm just going to go through a couple of the slides and let you see a little closer what this is. But you should be observing and describing this work of art. Just about a minute and a half remaining. Write as much as you can. Keep writing. Time's up. That was 5 minutes. So here's what I need you all to do. First of all, I got to turn that alarm off. Okay. What I need you all to do is copy and paste whatever you wrote, scrappy, incomplete, bad semicolons, copy and paste it right into the box and just drop it right in. There we go. Oh, look at these giant descriptions. All these AP English teachers writing so much. Great. So here's what I'm seeing, and I'm just going to read some of what I'm seeing out loud as the rest of you are copying and pasting. So all the colors of the rainbow, circular form, blue, yellow, pink, human and supernatural figures, wings, gold leaf decorative framing, varied expressions, time, country, culture, pan, primary colors, one section, Adam and Eve, green. Oh my goodness. I sound like Charlotte Perkins Gilman describing wallpaper. Okay, you guys are not very good 17-year-old students. You're play acting teacher, AP English teachers to the T. Bright primary colors, primitive depictions of Parisian scenes, playful color choices, primary colors of blue, red, and yellow, massive, trompe l'oeil view of heaven, colorful, soft palette, ornate gold frames, circular shapes, primary colors, dancers, fountains, figures, flowy lines, vignettes, primary colors, gold, blue tones, music, cubism, over and over and over again. What's incredible about this exercise, pick any painting, pick the shortest prompt you can possibly make, is the kinds of answers that people give. Yes, some people have listed here, Cameron, you've got all the different things that you're seeing, centaurs and child wings, angels floating. What I love about this is that you all, some of you maybe have never really done art history before or taught art very much. And all my students always end up talking about the same things you see in Jansen's History of Art book, the same things that every human being does when he or she is talking about art. You talked about color, you talked about line, you talked about textures and forms that you saw, value, which is how dark or light something is, hatched lines. Let me show you what my students did the very first year I did this a few years ago. I was stuck, by the way, teaching a 1 day a week 20th century art history class. In parentheses, I've never taken an art history course. I'm not a professional art historian. I have no idea what I'm doing. I just had a really good, simple prompt, and I did this. And so when I worked with my students, these are their responses. And I took them home. I didn't let my students write anything on the papers. This was, pre-COVID days when I was just collecting papers in a room with 20 kids. And I took all those and I started going home and I started kind of cataloging and looking at all of this. And everything you see in quotes is from a different student response. They talked about lines. They talked about color. They talked about the composition. They talked about content and imagery. A lot of you were doing this and you were jumping right into the kinds of things that were being depicted. Art gives us a depiction, very often, a representation of things. You list the things, that's part of the job. People talked about contrasts. People talked about what these paintings and what these figures might mean. They talked about forms that were repeated over time. They talked about tone. Started giving me words like peaceful and springy, and a lot of action in the painting, almost chaotic. They gave me comparisons and analogies. Here they started sounding like AP English teachers too. Has the artistic style of an American in Paris. Four seasons, looks like a Pokemon ball if you zoom out all the way. Thanks, high school senior, for that helpful simile. Context, right? They see the fine gold edges on the side that caught people's eye. This is the actual context for Marc Chagall's 1964 strange masterpiece that is at the top of the Paris Opera House. What I love about this lesson is lots of things. We're going to talk about why this is such an effective way. It's an effective way to even kick off an assignment the first week of class. Now what I would like to do is strangle this lesson with teacher things that I do and that you do. Let's talk about terrible lessons. So here's my terrible lesson of this. The kids can't look at this work of art until I give them a lot of context. So I'm going to save the day with a long biography of Marc Chagall. We're going to talk about how he was a Belarusian Jew and he was exiled and he had all these interesting pictures. I'll show lots of pictures that Marc Chagall did. Blah, blah, blah. I did a whole slideshow. I watched a lecture on the Great Courses Plus, now Wondrium, where I learned things from professors. I went on Wikipedia for a while, clicked on other things, opened up Jansen's, opened up old yellowed notes from college and showed that all off. Marc Chagall. I once saw Marc Chagall's stained glass windows in Switzerland or something. Okay, then a slideshow of the Paris Opera House. Let's talk about the building. This is a Beaux-Arts masterpiece and it's located at the Palais Garnier and the whole thing, right? And with this and that and the gold, and you sit in the seats and they're red and they play the thing. And let's do a whole thing in the Paris Opera House. And I was once there. So number 3, here's a whole story. I went with my sister and we saw a ballet and it was very nice and blah, 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 blah. Then I'm going to give a handout with a graphic organizer, a chart and lists of all the different things and Jansen's rules of what you have to talk about when you talk about art, which is line and color and texture and form in that order. And then I'm going to give you all, my students, my AP English prompt. Here it is. This is the ceiling of the Paris Opera House painted by Marc Chagall in 1964. The work is vast, covering some 2,400 square feet of the ceiling. Because the painting was so discordant with the style of the building, it has been a source of significant controversy for decades. Write an essay in which you analyze 3 specific techniques Chagall uses to honor the music and art of the Opera House and contextualize this work in the city of Paris. Then explain why these particular techniques helped Chagall achieve his purpose. Why is the painting so controversial? Do you agree with the critics or the defenders? How does this painting change your perspective on music? There's some laughing going on, some guilty laughs I'm seeing. Anyone have any confessions to make here about the prompts that you come up with? I want to tell you all a story for a second. I worked many years, like I said, at the Princeton Review, and while I was there, I worked as a tutor, a fancy New York City tutor. And I developed over time a style to work with students that was very non-invasive. I never touch or edit my students' essays. I talk about them, and then I give them some inspiration, like, hey, I got really confused partway through. Maybe you could clear this up. The very first thing I always do with a tutoring student is, well, I come up with a plan to get them off of tutoring, right? Because that's the whole point. And I look at a prompt. I say, well, what's the prompt your English teacher gave you? And I'd say, let's figure it out together. What's the prompt your professor gave you? Professors are even worse. I was a TA at the University of Notre Dame for a couple of years. It just gets worse the higher up you go in the ivory tower. And I read these big, old, honking 17-part, each paragraph is a different idea, things, because the teacher or the professor couldn't make up their mind about what they wanted to ask, because the teacher or the professor didn't trust the student to do the independent work that's needed for an essay. So here's what I want to do. Let me share my screen again. Okay, so there's my prompt. And I had fun. Can I just talk about how much fun I had writing this? I just kept adding. I'm just sort of conjuring the ghosts of AP English teacher past to get this going. Here's my question for all of you in the chat. Think this through before you type anything. What was the power, the special power of the first lesson that the second lesson did not have? This version, the one you spend hours prepping, this version is not as good as this version. Why? What is the special power of this lesson plan? Take a moment and type your response in the chat. These are great answers. Low stakes, so easy. They don't even have to describe what it means. I set them, like, if you literally, and I'm not speaking lightly of this, if you have good enough vision and you're not colorblind, we all have access to this. We don't even need necessarily particularly good grasp of the English language to be able to do this work. I'm not parsing out John Adams' letter to so-and-so. I'm right there just looking at something. Open-ended discussion and curiosity. The student's the agent, empowerment, it's safe, allowed for individual creativity. Less threatening, fosters discovery, the power of the imagination. It just is what it is. It forces you to look at the painting closely. And Janet, you've made that comment there. Imagine if I actually gave you the 8 to 10 minutes. Imagine if it was just a sheet of paper, no name on it. I kind of collected it in class. So yeah, and this to write, Christina, to write without worrying about the right answer. What is the wrong answer to the first lesson? What? Nothing. There's everyone's a winner in that lesson, and everyone can come to that table on equal footing, and it's an enormously validating. And Tim, the common elements of construction, right? Seeing other responses. The students were absolutely thrilled when they saw how similar they were all talking. We're all part of this common experience, this common language of description that we use. So the first lesson, in its smallness, in its narrowness, in its lack of contextualization, opened up a lot of things. It builds trust for sure. It allows for, it's just so completely open-ended. And yet it's a very specific verb I'm giving you. Describe. Don't analyze, don't with your AP English teacher thing you did. Describe, just describe the work of art. Any of us can do it. It builds confidence. So we did my terrible lesson. Now I'm going to show you some tips for teaching art. So I taught this course on 20th century art to a bunch of kids, some of whom are fuddy-duddies, and they don't like modern art. They are, you know, they were arch conservatives, like inquisitors from the Spanish Inquisition. These people, they were not having change. And so I had to teach them like the most abstract art. I'm going to show you some of it. But here are my tips, having been through this journey, having taught art and English and history, how I've made it all work. And you can take these or leave these. Some of you have done more art teaching than I have, so I welcome corrections and feedback on this. But this is absolutely critical. You can only use high quality images. Do not get your 1982 overhead projector, your ugly black and white photograph that's distorted and lined up on the bottom, and have your kids scrunched over one copy of it. Figure out how to use Google Arts and Culture, the website I sent you to, which has ultra high resolution copies of these art to let your students see for themselves. Get it in front of them with no impediments, because of course, there is a difference between seeing something in a museum and seeing it in person. There is a difference between seeing an ugly book copy and the copy that you all, and a copy that sort of brings it right to your eyes. That, as you kept zooming in on that Opera House ceiling, you could see more and more and more texture. You can actually see the seams as you get all the way down in, see the seams where it was attached to the ceiling, because it is 2,400 square feet. And parentheses, fun fact, they had to smuggle that into the Paris Opera House because they knew the reaction was going to be so explosive. When it was unveiled, that work of art, somebody called it a genocide against French civilization. So anyway, watch the, so by the way, that just shows you that you can put some of the fun context after they get the chance to interact with the work of art. But anyway, so your students can't analyze this work if it's not in high quality. That's just a prerequisite of everything else I'm going to say. Second thing, remove every barrier that you place accidentally or otherwise to interpretation. So let's go through them. Student says, I'm not good at art. You say, you don't have to make art. You have to describe art. And I know you're good at describing. I've heard you talk before. Second, this is weird. Why are we doing this? We're doing it because I said so, but also we're doing it because you don't get this too much of this pushback because actually students love this. This is a superpower when you use it in your classroom, because it's not whatever speech you want to throw at them or whatever poem or whatever project you have. This is so much more interesting. So I actually didn't ever have resistance to it, but I could see somebody saying, well, isn't this English class? You have to figure out how you want to respond to that. I haven't really thought it through. As I was saying, I can't see this, it's blurry. You didn't get them that high quality image and you couldn't find one. So you should have picked another work of art that you could have. Removed the barrier of the visual blockers. If you have visually impaired students, think about how you can support them through this without humiliating them or putting them off to the side. This line, okay, I get it. You're not art teacher. whatever, neither am I. Get over it. Doesn't mean we all have eyes to see, right? Here's some painting somebody put up in this apartment. It's such an open door for everyone to experience art. And as I said before, I've done this incredibly successfully with no formal training. I would benefit immensely, I'm sure, from what scholars have achieved in art history, but that's not what I'm going to do. I'm not going to worry about it. So whatever imposter syndrome you have, forget it. I'm your example. This is a problem. Oh, this is my favorite sculpture. Isn't it just beautiful? Right? I showed you Marc Chagall's Paris Opera House. Oh, when I went there, I fell in love with it, and it soars above the room. What you are doing when you say that is you can't criticize this work of art because it's the teacher's favorite student. It becomes unimpeachable. You can't have an open interpretation because it's slathered in my love and adoration. Don't talk about how you think about the work of art to start the conversation. That's not normally something people do, but it can creep in, right? Like, especially if it's an experience or it's something that you really love. Don't let on that you love a particular painting. By the way, I've been to the Paris Opera House a few times, and the first 3 times I saw Chagall's painting, I thought, what the heck is that doing in this building? It doesn't make any sense at all. I don't like it. And then it kind of worked its magic on me. And now I think I kind of like it. So I leave those value judgments out of the way because, I don't want that to contaminate the pool. I'll also, just as a reminder, if you come into teaching a poem and you say, I love this poem, it's my favorite poem, and this is my favorite poet, what are you doing to your students' ability to have their own feelings about that work of art? Just putting that out there. And then the final line, which is never said out loud, but thought every time you say, you cannot understand the Odyssey unless I teach you for 3 days about ancient Greece. You cannot understand Dostoevsky unless you get a master's degree in Russian. You cannot access this thing that you want to access because I have a college degree and I say that there's a boulder that blocks your access. So I just want to think about, are you putting a minefield in front of your students, or is it a wide open field for them to run around in? Have fun with your students. Let them have fun by leaving this very open. So I don't want any of those barriers of interpretation. Just as a quick question, what barriers to interpretation did I put up to you in front of Marc Chagall's Paris Opera House? I saved all my context and all my funny stories for the rest of my presentation, where it's kind of interesting. Good. And I know some people, there's a lot of repentance happening in the chat, and I appreciate that. I think this is a good confessional hour. Think like, do I write 80-word prompts? Yes, I do. I will not do that again. Do I feel the need to put stuff in front of my students' text? This was a real turning point in my teaching career because I did this for most of my career. I only changed a few years ago. And I was at this training thing a few years ago. It was people who run something called Kane Academy. And they were talking about how teachers keep piling junk up in front of their students in the text. And I sat there red-faced, guilty, and just had my head down the whole flight home. And I really started thinking differently about how I approach this. One thing I love, and you'll notice this about all the giant things you wrote in the chat, I only said incredibly positive things about all the things you said. And I only say positive things about all the things my students say. This is just sort of one of the classic rules of teacher professional development. Is like, don't start day 2 with like, I don't really think that that's what the green light means. Don't squash your students' ability to interpret, especially if your opening verb is to describe. If you're inviting students to describe something, then of course they're going to get it right. I wrote a question that 100% of the students will get 100% right. And then I lavished them with a lot of affirmation and things. Oh, when do we stop affirming? I think what I mean by this is, I don't think in 180 days of a school year, I'm going to say yes to everything my students say. What I'm going to do in those opening discussions in those first few weeks is find a way to spin everything in the most positive way possible. I do that just generally in my class, but I'm willing later, once we've all kind of broken the ice and we're all kind of know each other, then we can begin challenging those ideas. And Shar, you've got this exactly right. Close reading begins with the observing and describing. That's one of the superpowers of that lesson, because of course, that's what we do with texts. Start with the description. Let yourself just figure out, this is a speech. John F. Kennedy's talking about the steel thing to the people in the audience. Who are they? What is he saying? 1, 2, 3. Get that down before you do anything else. So here are some of the lines that I do. If somebody kind of says something crazy, I'll say, well, I didn't really see that. That's really fascinating, right? Or this is a really great question. Let me think about it. This is another tip for art that I'm going to get to actually. I'm going to do this in the next one, about letting this sort of marinate over time. I don't like preparing things. And this year, before the school year began, I was teaching 6th, 9th, and 12th grade. I have Marco Learning in my life. I have Marco, my actual dog, who the company is named after, in my life. I was very busy and very unhappy all school year. So I made a commitment to myself to prepare less this year, to protect my own happiness, because the happier I was, the better I was going to be as a teacher. And that mattered as much happiness as I could squeeze out of the year. So what I shifted the attention to over the course of this year was to making really good experiences for my students and making them find Chagall's ceiling of the Paris Opera House and bring it to class and talk about it. Make them do the historical session and the research, the backstory. Why are you watching? I mean, I actually love, plug for the Great Courses Plus, now Wondrium. If you've never used this resource, it's just hundreds of college professor lectures of very high quality that I use I call it filling up before I go in to teach something I don't know a lot about. I had to teach the Cold War once and I was like, I kind of don't know a lot about the stuff. Watched like 5 of these lectures and I was kind of full up. So the resource is called, actually, it's called Wondrium now. They rebranded, but it used to be the Great Courses Plus. And anyway, that's a place, if you are teaching art, for you to do some of that research you want to do, but make them do the backstory, make them find the interesting things and write about it. That bringing into discussion means that all the art history prep is being shared by the group. Also, analyzing a work of art together. When I taught my 1 day a week 20th century art history elective thing that was thrown at me, I focused on 1 work of art each week for the class. I taught Cubism. I taught abstract expressionism more broadly for like a couple minutes, but we really focused on 1 work of art. And that enabled the thick description, the analysis and the writing, and a real discussion. 1 painting, how easy is that, right? So you're over prepping art if you teach it the way of the bad lesson. You're prepping my style if you go right for how do you make the students do the work for you? How do you let their excitement come in? Last thing I'll say, number 5, is what has been the theme of my session, which is don't strangle your lesson with a lesson. This has been, again, one of those things. I don't know how many of you have been in the classroom for at least 15 years, but there's something that happens at year 5, people leave. At year 10, you're just unhappy for a while. At year 15, you're like, I really got to find something new because I'm sick of this. So the thing about that year 15 for me was like, that was the moment when I realized that I think it was at that point in my career that I realized that my teaching had accumulated all of these barnacles and all this junk and all this jewelry and eBay store stuff. All this stuff accumulated on me, and I told very long, boring stories, and I overburdened my lessons with lesson things. And I thought strategically about what I was going to do instead of just letting my students talk about what is in this painting. Let them do this and get out of their way. That's the theme of my whole presentation tonight. Don't let your pedagogy choke your teaching. And that means don't rush the describe this painting step and don't do it for them. Like, let them do it. They really enjoy it. I taught many works of 20th century art, not really knowing, I'm making it sound like I did no prep. I prepared, but I didn't go in saying, this is what you're going to get out of Jackson Pollock. This is what it all means. Marcel Duchamp flips a urinal on his head and signs it R. Mutt in 1917. What does it all mean? I didn't come in with that agenda, so we weren't playing guess what's in the teacher's head anymore. And the other thing was I let students develop their interpretation over days. I was at the AP annual conference in 2019. This is a huge revelation for me. David Miller stood up in Orlando, Florida at the Swan and Dolphin Resort, and he said, the thing I've noticed about high school teachers, and I'm like watching, what are you gonna say? And he said, the thing I've noticed about high school teachers is that when they see the bells about to ring, they'll jump in and dish what the real meaning of The Great Gatsby is at the last second. And that's why I sat there red-faced at that conference too, because I thought, oh, I've totally done that. It's Thursday, it's Friday, I'm not gonna see them. They're never gonna get it unless I tell them, right? And so here's what I did. My school does this very stupid school retreat thing. And we go to this place in Pennsylvania and there's bad food and there's cabins. My wife has to sleep with the seventh grade girls and I have the ninth grade boys and we manage the cabins and it's a nightmare and there's rain and bugs and it's horrible. But all the kids were there from our school. So I gave them an assignment. I told them, I said, you have to find me in the camp and you have to tell me what you think this painting means. It was like 3 days later. I kicked the interpretation, the actual work. I gave them a couple of days to think about it and come back. They came up to me on the bus. They came up to me in the cafeteria. They came up to me like banging on the cabin door. Mr. Moscatiello, I've got it. I think that the painting means this, right? And I just tricked them into doing AP English level analysis. And I didn't rush it to get to the end of the period. That was one of the insights that David Miller gave me that I want to share with all of you. Don't rush to the end. Let it marinate over days. If you've had an experience with a work of art, sometimes it lasts weeks and months and years. That opera, that painting, that sculpture, that place that you love. And we need to help our 16 and 17-year-old students see that. Okay. Why are we talking about art in AP English? I want to explain a little bit of this and I want to hear from all of you on your perspectives. So I asked a question in the Facebook groups. To what extent does your AP English classroom cultivate your students' aesthetic sensibilities? Not a question, it wasn't even a question I thought of until I started preparing for this presentation. One criticism that's made of the AP program is, well, it kind of forces everyone into a test. It forces everyone into multiple choice and 6-point rubrics and the CED. Now, the College Board tattooed in the early parts of the CED that this is not a curriculum. The College Board is not shoving a curriculum onto anyone. And I'm sorry, the more I look at the AP Lang CED and AP Lit CED, I don't really feel like there's a lot there that is imposed on me as a teacher. We're like, oh no, setting. We never talk about that in literature. Or like, this is a takeover. It feels is very open. Maybe that criticism is valid in other subjects, but I don't see anything really in particular that blocks teachers from doing this. But that's the negative framing of it. What's the positive framing? Do we cultivate aesthetic sensibilities in our classroom? One of the answers that Jennifer Hiller posted in the group was this. She says, we pause from time to time. This is AP Lit group. We pause from time to time to luxuriate in the beauty of a line or phrase or section of literature. Sometimes it's the content, and other times it's just the beauty of the language for its own sake. What a beautiful expression of what we can all do if we want to. And I think that this idea of just like, okay, whatever, forget counting the literary devices or like guessing what's in my head or earning the evidence and commentary points for. Let's just enjoy this for what it is and get lost in it. And you can do that with those description exercises. You can do it with those initial kind of prompts that open things up. Now, the obvious advantages to me are a few things for teaching art and why I think you should all do it more. One is that the method of analyzing art is similar to that of analyzing tests. Obviously, from the perspective of you describe it, and think about it, you described line, color, texture, value. What do? We describe words and sentences and paragraphs and organization. We look at repetition and tone and what it all means beyond what it means. It's a similar journey. One way to think about this is the medieval fourfold hermeneutic. So I'm a medieval historian by training. And in the Middle Ages, really a lot of what we do in modern literary criticism comes from medieval scholars learning to interpret the Bible. And they started with the now it's kind of called a historical grammatical method of biblical interpretation. But basically, what do the words literally say? Okay, we start there for a while. Oh, there's a Greek word, there's a Hebrew word, there's something. We got to do some work to figure out what these words actually mean. Then we look at, well, what the word figuratively means. When the Bible says under the shadow of God's wings, doesn't necessarily literally mean that God has literal wings. There's some meaning beyond that. Then they would go to, I think it was called the anagogical and tropological meaning, the meaning within the work, the meaning in the universe, right? We do this if we're effective in text. We do this today in literature, and we do it in art. This is a swirling pattern of bright colors on a ceiling. There's 4 or 5 different colors. I see some centaurs and some Eiffel Towers, and I see little words that say Bizet. Okay. And then I take, well, what does that mean? Where is this? You go deeper and deeper. You can use that initial exercise of describe this painting to kick off an AP English class and say, we're just going to do this with other kinds of texts, whether that's a cartoon or speech or a letter or something else. The second point here, and I love that Gina Cordum did this in her mixed media approach talk here on Mosaic I was at, where she talked about how much our students love and care about the visual universe. I think it's even fascinating that the word aesthetic itself has had a renaissance. You notice this, that your students for the last few years have been saying, oh, that's very aesthetic. They're kind of using it wrong, but whatever. That's very aesthetic, or I have a very aesthetic Instagram account. That's a very aesthetic that you have. And I think it points to something that an Instagram era produced, which is a much higher standard for ourselves of cultivating and creating beauty for whatever its purposes are. That's the highest view of it. We got better at beauty. How many of you got better at taking pictures over the last 10 to 15 years? Just what happened? I don't think anyone from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, those were just all bad pictures. And then somehow the standard got better. Why is it that National Geographic for a very long time had the largest Instagram account with like 200 million followers? It's beauty and some craving we have for it in an online context. I love, and I've already preached this point, art can break the ice for people, right? There's just no barriers to entry when you have no barriers to entry. And art's for everyone. I think I'll get to this point in my next kind of 5th segment here. But I'm curious about what other advantages you all see. If we had to make a case to Trevor Packer, we wrote a treatise and said, like, you have to require art in AP English, or like, it really belongs here. What would that treatise say? So I'm going to open the chat. I'm sorry, I haven't been tracking the chat entirely through this. And yeah, I'm just curious to hear what, oh, by the way, Sister Wendy's The Story Painting is great. I watched those VHSs when I self-studied for AP Art History in high school. So I'm just curious, everyone, let's think about, are there other key planks of the case for why art, in its occasional way, belongs in our classes? Yeah, Suzanne. I love that. Suzanne just made the point that it makes students really learn about life, not just a test score or a grade. So my describe this work of art thing is not graded. It's not on your exam. You're not going to get a sophistication point for it. Stop it. Art has been used as commentary. Yes. It's so fun, right? Yes. Especially when you're getting stale, throw that work of art, that photograph, that thing up at them, and you can reinvigorate your classroom. Yes. The students have a voice and they're not wrong. That's right. It sets a tone. Ask yourself now, what's the tone you want to set for your classroom? And does art, in the style in which I've proposed that you could teach it here, give you an opportunity to manifest that tone, that ethos of learning, that aesthetic experience? I did love, by the way, and I was expecting this, there were a few teachers who also posted pictures of beautiful things in their classrooms. Your bleak cinder block place. I mean, there's been this whole Twitter discussion this past week about making beautiful classrooms. And I think people who don't do the work that we do diminish the work that we do when they treat teachers decorating rooms as some sort of stupid little frippery or distraction. It actually can be really vital to making an experience for our students where they feel safe and at home, making an experience for our students where they're stimulated, making, I don't know, letting students kind of daydream into something on the wall rather than just you. So I think there's a lot of, evokes feelings and complexity, right? That Marc Chagall's painting, which was so controversial because that building is so 150 years old and grandiose, and that painting is so modern, it raises questions like, who's actually right or wrong? Because, like I said, the first few times I went to the Paris Opera House and saw that thing on the ceiling, it is jarring. It does not belong there. I kind of love it. And dealing with that messy feeling of knowing it doesn't quite fit, but that Chagall had some kind of vision, and I'm going to try to follow along with him. Literary crossovers as well. And again, I've kind of treated this as a Lang and Lit session. By the way, I also just want to say, beauty is not just for the literature classroom. I think beautiful speeches are beautiful too. I think beautiful letters are beautiful too. I think nonfiction, I think history writing can be beautiful, rarely is, can be beautiful. How do we find beauty in those things? So the last, this is a great discussion. I hope we all continue it into Facebook groups and other places. I really believe this for you and for your students. Art opens doors for all sorts of experiences. I gave my students an assignment. I had to leave one of the days for a sub. I gave my students assignment, which they had to take this and another one of Kazimir Milevich's paintings and analyze, describe it, and then speculate on what they thought the meaning was. Some of my students thought I was joking, and some thought and my fuddy-duddies, they actually, I love it. My arch conservatives, they sat there with their arms folded like this on like the most abstract days. And an abstract art for a lot of people is a joke. And I went a few years ago, my wife and I went to the city of Cuenca, which is not that far outside of Madrid, where during the years of Francisco Franco, the abstract artists of Spain kind of hid out and made their art, stuff that looks like this. And in these 15th century medieval Spanish houses, they're called the casas colgadas, the hanging houses. They hang off of a cliff. I'm not lying. They put the Museum of Abstract Art of Spain in there. And I went in there in this empty-ish medieval house thing and saw these works of art. And I was maybe, I was about 30 at the time. And I kind of finally got it. Like, oh, there's something to this that isn't just a joke that we can all joke about at the Thanksgiving dinner table. So abstract art opens doors for your students to get over their very first worst reaction to things they don't like. That's not art. I could do that. My kid could do that. Okay, that's great. That's fun. But actually, maybe there's something to this. This, Amalia Ramanankirahina, is from Madagascar. This is a work of art that she calls family portraits. And she portrays a lot of African colonial figures in this way. Fascinating ideas about colonialism, about gender, about history, the past and the present are possible with art. Don't just go to classic Western civilization stuff. There's some incredible experiences that you can create from contemporary artists, from artists who are very diverse. This painting from David Alfaro Siqueiros he's a Mexican muralist. He's one of the 3 great Mexican muralists. Can you and your students find those contemporary artists who are breaking the mold, who bring in diverse perspectives? Is that a way that we're trying to diversify our curricula? Is art a way to achieve it? Is art a way for us to get around this? And Heather, to your point about all of this, I think the beauty of representation of diverse perspectives and voices is that we can steer right around political minefields as much as we can if we do it right. And especially if we do it and we come in with the open-ended prompts. We come in with experiences for students that trust them to trust their own voices, to be free, and that free you up from all the preparation you should be doing. Why are you working so hard? Why are you putting barriers in front of your own ability to teach all these incredible things? Do you know anything about David Alfaro Siqueiros? No. Can you get there? You know you can. You can because your students are going to do it with you. You can because you have a good prompt. Describe this painting. 3 words. I hope that this has been useful. And again, we will share these slides. These are just a chance for you to get these names. There's not a ton of time. I know people are going to be running off to Lit in a minute. Stay in touch with me. I'm on all the Marco Learning social media accounts, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. You can, and the dog isn't here, Teresa. This is, you're worse than the students, okay? The students, I get on YouTube with people like Tim and other people, and people, I'm like, hey everyone, we're gonna learn how to study everything. And they're like, where's your dog? I thought you were Marco. And yep, that's my life. Thank you. Everyone, this is so amazing. I got to read the chat afterwards. I haven't had a chance to really follow up with everyone, but I'm going to download this and make sure I get a chance to read what everyone said. And I appreciate all of this encouragement.
John, I really appreciate you showing up tonight for this, right? And unfortunately, we didn't get to see the dog, but that's okay. I'm sure that there are plenty of other opportunities to check out Marco as well. But honestly, thank you so much for that. A good access point, a non-threatening access point to get kids' affective filters to go down so we can get them to really engage with what we're doing in class. So I really appreciate that. We are coming to the top of the hour. So what we're going to do is we are going to just look to the week ahead. Please note that our keynote speaker is the one and only Brandon Abden for next Sunday. And so we want to enjoy our time with him next Sunday. And then for next week, we have Teaching Poetry Rhetorically by done by Jim Jordan and Carlos Barrera, both with us this evening. And they are a fun pair to watch interact with one another. 2 of some of my most favorite consultant friends that I do have. And then for AP Literature, we have Morrison McCarthy, 2 Teachers, 2 Approaches from Roy Smith and Brian. And Brian's actually the head of the AP Lit Facebook group there. So we encourage you to come and join us next week as well. So you can sign up for those sessions through Mosaic as always. And we look forward to seeing you there. John, I will, just so you know, I will also be saving this chat, and that will go into what will be uploaded onto aplithelp.com and everywhere else that is actually distributed. And I don't necessarily know the other places where that shows up, but I know there are a couple other places for it. I think Christy might put it in the Facebook group as well. So this should be accessible. So thank you very much for tuning in late night in Paris. Sorry, not Paris, Madrid. Sorry, you're in Spain, not France. And we really appreciate you.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everyone, again at Mosaic. This is such a beautiful community of teachers. So thank you all. And I'm going to hop in the lit session with everyone. See y'all later.
All right. Good night.